Hello, welcome back to the Cricket Nerds. Me and Zac today talking about the first game week of the World Cup. That's how we're going to do things. We might throw the extra bonus podcast in there every now and then if we're feeling a bit cheeky, but there will be a weekly podcast where we talk about what's happened in that game week of World Cuppiness. If you're not sure what a game week is, you need to join our fantasy league. You're only 1 week behind if you join now, so don't worry about it. But cracking on, the most interesting game, I reckon, is probably the latest one. So should we work backwards in chronology? So we'll start with the latest one today. The game happened as of recording today, and that was India versus Australia. And then we can work back to the start because I can't bring it. It's not within me to be able to face the England-New Zealand game.
Yeah, we'll just put it on the sidelines of it.
We'll work towards that.
Yeah.
So India versus Australia. It was a proper Chennai pitch. And it was like we were playing the Border Gavaskar Trophy all over again. It felt like just hostile pitches and really tough for batters. Made it very, very interesting for a sort of spectator, though. Like, somebody that didn't really mind either way who won.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm kind of supporting India because I don't want Australia to win, but it was very interesting. What did you think of the bowlers? Because, I mean, that was where they controlled the game, and India's bowlers were incredible, weren't they?
Yeah, I'm not really going to talk about the last 10 overs of Australia's innings because it was kind of Australia just saying, let's bat the overs and get as many as we can. And it was a little bit boring. It wasn't really that same contest. However, what we did see in those first 40 overs was kind of what we expect from India. Jasprit Bumrah bowling superbly well, hard to score off. Mohammad Siraj bowling pace. Kuldeep Yadav and Ravindra Jadeja being really tricky in those middle overs. I mean, it's great that Ravi Ashwin's playing in the World Cup as well, especially from an Indian point of view. Like I don't think he's going to take many wickets. He's not that sort of bowler for me. He's more of the crafty, keeping things tight at one end, allowing wickets to fall at the other end. So yeah, it was what we expect from India. But for me, it was Ravindra Jadeja. He was the one who took the crucial wickets. Like he removed Stephen Smith, Alex Carey, and then there was someone else. I'm missing someone else. Oh, Labuschagne. It was Smith and Labuschagne, that partnership that he broke. That was, for me, that was crucial because all it takes is one of them to score a century or both of them to score high 50s and Australia are in a much better position.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that on this kind of really slow pitch as well, their strike rates were fine. Going at sort of 65 strike rate, knocking it around. That is exactly what they needed. And if those two got set, they would have accelerated as well. So
of course, yeah,
you're absolutely right. Breaking that partnership early was absolutely crucial. But they did get off to a really good start as well. I thought Bumrah getting Mitch Marsh out early was really annoying because he's in my fantasy team, but it knocked the wind out of Australia's sails because that's been Australia's game plan going into this. In all the warm-up matches, they've got off to a really good start in the first 10 overs in the power play, and then knocked it around if they need to in the boring overs of an ODI. But this time they couldn't. It was a difficult pitch, and they used the conditions to their advantage, and it just made it really difficult for them. I thought David Warner actually looked really good for his 41.
Yeah.
But just went out to some clever spin from Kuldeep. And once Kuldeep found his length, I thought he was really potent. And I think that's going to be a key is as soon as he figures out where to bowl, and because he's got that consistency back now, him and Jadeja in those middle overs is just, it will hopefully tie things up really well for India.
Yeah.
What did you think about India's start with the bat, though? Because I thought, after their batting, after their bowling innings, I was like, well, this is India's game. That I know what the title of this video is going to be already. But as soon as it started and Ishan Kishan went out first ball, Rohit Sharma, and Shreyas Iyer, it was like, oh my goodness, what's going on? Like they're 3 for 2 or something.
Yeah, it was
So
crazy.
it was, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you, if any team is going to come out and look to defend a modest total like that, it's going to be Australia's bowlers. I mean, the firepower of Stark, Hazelwood, Cummins, we know what they provide for Australia. We know how effective they are. And Josh Hazelwood was on the money. I mean, he's had quite a bit of experience in the IPL for Royal Challengers Bangalore over the last 2 seasons, bowling in those Indian conditions, and he just seemed to tie the batsman down. I mean, he trapped Rohit Sharma with a really nice delivery. And then Mitchell Stark getting his 50th wicket. I was like, that's it. He's just going to keep going. He's going to keep blowing them apart. But for India, having KL Rahul coming to the wicket to join Virat Kohli, that's the experience that India need in that middle order to calm things down. And all they needed to do was bat the overs. If India bat the overs, they win. And they just did it perfectly. They absorbed all the pressure that was on them. They blunted the rest of the new ball bowling, and then just milked it in the middle overs, because they're such good players of spin that when Australia are relying on Adam Zampa, who's not in great form, let's be honest, and Glenn Maxwell, who he's not a he might bowl 10 overs for Australia, but he's not a first choice spinner, isn't he? He's not an out and out spinner. And I think for them, it's not going to be that difficult for them. I was really impressed with KL Rahul, because for me, he's the one place in that batting lineup that's got a question mark. What were your thoughts on his innings?
To be honest, I really rate KL Rahul as an ODI batter, because I think it suits him well. I mentioned in a couple of videos ago that I think anchors, what in T20 you classify as an anchor player, that is the perfect model for an ODI, because they are those players that are able to stick around, really rotate the strike and then accelerate. David Malan is a perfect example. Joe Root, Virat Kohli, and KL Rahul are perfect examples of anchors. And they did exactly what they needed to. They're able to rotate the strike. If that was a T20 innings, you'd be pulling your hair out, because you'd be like, oh, you're just trying to protect your wicket and go for a big shot, risk it. And in T20, they absolutely should. And that's why in some games, both of those players have lost games for their teams before by batting too slowly. But in ODI, it's absolutely perfect. They knew what they were chasing. So that's when they're in their best state as well, because they know exactly how they need to pace their innings. And it was a masterclass. King Kohli and King Legend. It was exactly what India want to see. And it'll be a big relief to India as well, knowing that even if they start off in the worst possible way, losing 3 wickets for only 2 runs, and I think those 2 runs weren't even off the bat, that they can come back from that. And I think Kohli was actually dropped on 12 as well. So
he was. It
was good that he came back and he made them pay for it with a very well made 85. Yeah.
I think when you look at that Indian lineup, like, they don't rely on Kohli as much as Kohli is such a big part of that team. They don't rely on him, but they still want big runs from him. And the whole of India as a nation will expect big things from Kohli. And Sachin Tendulkar, his record in World Cups was amazing. I think he was top run scorer in maybe 3 World Cups. And King Kohli, he's the next one along, isn't he? Followed closely by Shubman Gill. And I think for those players, they need them to have these big World Cups to kind of get things going, to put their team in a really good position to win most of their games. You need those bankers in your team. So for Kohli to do that game 1 against Australia, who are probably going into it second favourites, then it's big news for them. Great stuff. However, there were 400 runs scored in that game, and that isn't as much as South Africa scored in their first innings against Sri Lanka on what is probably a very different pitch in Delhi. compared to Chennai, and
You'd think.
you think, but
You'd
one,
hope.
yeah, it's just crazy if you don't think that. But I think what this has taught me is that the team that's likely going to do best in this World Cup and progress through to the semi-finals and maybe eventually win it are the teams that can adapt best to conditions, because I reckon that will challenge even the Indian team playing in home conditions. When you're playing on a different pitch every single game, that's going to present a massive challenge, because when you play in, I don't know, Australia, New Zealand, you know what you're going to expect most games. Even in England, you kind of know what you're going to expect. But playing in the subcontinent, where you could get a batter's dream versus a bowler's dream, or a spinning raging Turner, like, it's so hard to know what you're going to get. And I just feel like this game, it was just mad.
It was, yeah.
Absolutely crazy. 3 South African centuries. Let's focus in on Aidan Markram. I mean, it's been a long time coming in the international arena for him, hasn't it?
It really has. And I really like Aidan Markram. I think he is such a class player. He's very likable. Um, when I think he might have been an injury replacement actually, for David Milan. Ooh, was he? Oh, you know what? I think he might have actually been a COVID replacement when, in the IPL,
Oh, yeah.
when it was like stopped halfway through. I think Aidan Markram was the David Milan replacement for Punjab Kings. And I really liked him then. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. I was gutted when we didn't retain him. And it has just been a long time coming where he's shown these glimmers of absolute brilliance, and he's done it in test matches. He was one of the only ones a few years ago in a test series against Australia to really show some grit, and I think he got a century in that. And yeah, he's shown these glimmers, but never fully come to the party. But he's in a nice vein of form now, and to top it off with 106 off 54 against a pretty decent Sri Lankan bowling attack. Now, obviously, the conditions were in the batter's favour, and it was a bit brutal for the bowling side, but you still have to put those deliveries away. And it was really good because it wasn't just belligerent violence that he was using either. Like he only hit 3 sixes. He was just picking the gaps perfectly, hitting it really hard, straight out the middle of the bat, and it was outstanding from all 3 of the Centurions in Quinton de Kock, Rassie van der Dussen, but Aidan Markram was the standout. And then having the finishers that they've got in Klaassen, Miller, and Marco Jansen, who can all go at that high strike rate. It was a perfect game from a South African standpoint.
Yeah.
And yeah, as soon as I saw the scoreline for the Australia India game after that, I was like, okay, this World Cup is set up really nicely, because there are going to be some pitches, like you say, that are going to be those really low scorers. But if they have to adapt and, batters go in a bit too conservatively when it's actually a, par is 400 type of pitch, then it's going to be exciting.
I mean, concerns for Sri Lanka, obviously, because even though it's a batter's dream to score 428 for 5, when the bowling is probably your strong point, that's going to be hard for them. I mean, I know they're missing Hasaranga de Silva in the middle overs. Dananjaya de Silva, not quite as good as Hasaranga, but you'd expect to see him bowl better than he did. And so, yeah, it was hard to watch if you're a Sri Lankan supporter, really, given how brutal it was. But you can't take anything away from this South African side, who are scary in a lot of ways. I would compare them in a way to a New Zealand side. Whereas South Africa, most World Cups come in and you're like, oh, they've got a really strong side. This is their year. They could cause mayhem and potentially win it. This year, I'm thinking they're kind of like a New Zealand. They're floating under the radar a bit. They've got those sorts of players like Aidan Markram, like Rassie van der Dussen, even Heinrich Klaassen to an extent, and David Miller even. We know what David Miller can do in the IPL, but still, he's not like... People don't talk about him on the same level as they do Jos Buttler, Virat Kohli, Shubman Gill, people like that. So they're one of these teams who are... They're not individuals. They're all together. and they're playing in part of that team, and I think they'll fly under the radar a bit. So yeah, I do think that they've got a strong side.
High ceiling in that team, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
And it's a team full of match winners as well. Like I think I've seen almost every single player in that side win a match for their team or a team in the past. So it is an exciting team. Just I still think it's a long tail, personally.
Yeah. You say you've seen them. You say you've seen them win matches. I reckon they've won matches consistently for their teams as well. It's not even yeah. So yeah, but yeah, I agree. Right. Long tail.
The next one that we got, if we work back chronologically, is Afghanistan Bangladesh. I don't have a whole lot to say about this. Bangladesh ended up just thrashing Afghanistan because they skittled them out early. I think it's just to be expected, isn't it? There's not a whole lot that Afghanistan can do with the ball if they're only putting 156 on the board. So I don't begrudge them at all. None of them really were expensive. It was just you didn't have enough to defend. It was impressive from the batters, I guess, from Bangladesh, knocking it off nice and quickly. But from the bowling standpoint, obviously, it all has to be caveated with there aren't very many good batters in Afghanistan. No. And that's just the reality of it. There is Ramanullah Gurbaz and Ibrahim Zadran. Those are the two. And as soon as you get a wicket against Afghanistan, you're pretty much off to a flyer. Yeah. And it's as easy as that. And when you've got the good opening bowlers that Bangladesh do, then you're always in the game, aren't you? And it was a pretty decent power play to begin with. I think they've got a partnership of 47 in 8 overs. But then it all, wheels came off as soon as there was one wicket. And that's about all I need to say. I don't know if you've got anything to add.
I think Afghanistan need one player to fire and score 150 and the rest of them, and 2 other players to score 50s for them to put up a competitive total. And I can't see where that's coming from. Other than, like you said, maybe Ramanullah Gurbaz might be able to provide one of those sorts of innings. Bangladesh, they're the team that their bowlers are going to do the most work for them. I mean, I can see them doing well against England, like bowling England out quite cheaply. They seem like they could be the bogey side for the England team. And I think a lot rests on the shoulders of the captain, Shakib Al Hassan. I know he's in the media quite a lot as being this controversial figure, but he could bring this Bangladesh team together. Interested to see how they do moving forward. But yeah, not much to say about that game. Kind of an expected result where Bangladesh played very well and Afghanistan kind of capitulated in the ways that we thought they might. And it's Rashid Khan. I said he could be the highest wicket taker in this tournament, but when he's not surrounded by class, it's kind of, obviously they're good bowlers, but they're not quite at his level. It's kind of like, let's just nudge him out and then focus on the rest. And that's what they did.
I think Afghanistan need to bowl first if they're going to win any games. Yeah. It's a lot rides on the toss for them, more so than other teams, I would say.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a shame. Onto another result that we expected to see.
Yeah.
But perhaps not in the same way, because it was Pakistan-Netherlands and Pakistan won. And that, any betting person would put their money on Pakistan. But I've got to say, Netherlands showed a lot more fight than we gave them credit for in our preview.
Definitely.
And that's what I learned from this match. Netherlands have a lot more bite than we gave them credit for. And any Netherlands fan should be very proud of their team after seeing that. Yes, you lost by 81 runs, but you made Pakistan really sweat. You got them all out. So you took 10 wickets against a very strong side. And Baz de Leede is a very exciting prospect for them. And he's, I think he's their best player, isn't he?
Oh, yeah.
And he's a player for the future as well. Like he's going to be the captain at some point.
Yeah.
And hopefully young Netherlands up-and-comers will look at Baz de Leede and be inspired and they'll be able to build a good team for the future.
It's in his name, though, isn't it? Leader. I mean,
The leader.
born to
Yeah,
lead.
it is.
But it wasn't just the fact that he came away with 4 wickets. Like some people, they steal a 4-fer or a 5-fer out of nowhere, but he got rid of Rizwan, Iftikhar Ahmed, and Shadab Khan. Like those aren't mugs, are they? They're like some of Pakistan's best batsmen, and the fact that he can do it with the ball and the bat is massive for the Netherlands. I mean, he was the one who got them to this World Cup, so a lot rests on his shoulders. But I do think as well, like as you said, Netherlands showed a lot of fight. I mean, they had Pakistan at 188 for 6. That just if they'd got one of Shadab Khan out or Mohammad Nawaz out a bit earlier, that could have been the difference. They could have been all out for maybe 230, 240, and that kind of gives Netherlands even more of an opportunity. But in the end, I mean, after Baz the leader, there isn't much to talk about for the Netherlands batting. I mean, they might get away with it in a 2020, but in the one day, that's kind of going to expose you a lot more. And the class of Pakistan's bowlers, I mean, they're going to defend that score, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think you're right. A lot relies on Baz the leader, and everybody else might chip in a little bit. I was impressed with Vikramjit Singh. Yep. It's nice to see him finally kind of show what he can do, because I think, well, every time I've watched him, he's failed. So that is nice to see. And I think a lot relies on Max O'Dowd doing well as well. I think if those two got off to a decent start together, if he got a 50 as well, could be a completely different story, and that could be the title of the podcast. So chin up, Netherlands. One day you might be the title of our podcast, but not today.
No.
Right. We've got to move on to the first match of the World Cup. Reluctantly, England got spanked. It was absolutely brutal. There's no consolation for England from this. It was embarrassing. Let's just diagnose what went wrong. So England,
where do we start?
England lost the toss, put into bat, and Bairstow looked great after the first 2 balls, I thought.
Yeah.
He pumped the second ball for 6. I was like, oh, hello, we're on here. And then Milan just feathered one behind, and I'd say that was probably the best wicket. That was the most justified wicket, even though it was a flat-footed push at one outside half. Of all of the wickets, that was the one that the bowlers earned the most. Yeah. But my goodness, it was a timid and flaccid display from the England batsman.
that is a great word to describe it. I mean, it was just not. Yeah, it just wasn't fun to watch from England's point of view. I mean, if you look at every result in game week 1, other than this one, everything that you'd expect to happen happened. Pakistan beat the Netherlands, Bangladesh beat Afghanistan, India beat Australia, and South Africa beat Sri Lanka. Like, you'd expect that to happen. What we don't expect is, well, England, New Zealand, you know it's going to be a close one, but you don't expect New Zealand to hammer England as badly as they did, or as by the margins they did. I mean,
I wouldn't have been surprised if New Zealand won. Like, if you told me New Zealand won before, I'd be like, yeah, that sounds about right. If you told me they won with 1 wicket down, with 2, like Devon Conway getting 150 and Rachin Ravindra getting unbeaten 123.
Yeah.
At number 3, I'd say you're having a laugh.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the New Zealand team, they were missing some key players as well. Like Glenn Phillips getting 2 for 17. Like, what's that about? I mean, there were just little things where if England just switch their brains on for 5 minutes and just assess the situation, they could have scored a lot more than they did. Like, at one stage, it was like, well, maybe England can get up to 300 when you're thinking we should be getting 330, 350. And then it's like, well, at one stage, we're going to struggle to get 250 here when Joe Root got out. So the fact that we got even to 282, you're happy with that given where we were, but you're like, this is no way near par. Like, how are England ever going to defend this? And like, you look at the batsmen who didn't bat, like Daryl Mitchell has been England's nemesis. England can't get him out. And then Glenn Phillips is so destructive. And then you've got Mitch Santner coming in at number 9.
And
I mean,
Jimmy Neesham always shows up
Jimmy
against England as well,
yeah,
and at World
it's just,
Cups. Yeah,
you just think England don't have anywhere near enough. And New Zealand coasted it. Like, it was an absolute drubbing. Do you want to talk about the bowling? I mean,
yeah, I think that's.
yeah.
I mean, from a New Zealand standpoint, very good. Matt Henry was outstanding. It's good to see him come to the party from a New Zealand standpoint. But from England, I thought it was very, very poor. It was clueless, if anything. There was not any threat from those England bowlers. Like when the pick of the bowlers is Moeen Ali against,
There was no pick of the bowlers.
there
Let's be
just
honest.
wasn't. Yeah,
Yeah.
there wasn't anything impressive. Sam Curran's first couple of
The
overs were
2
brilliant,
overs. Yeah, that was it.
but yeah, I think you said it at the time. You said it looked good at the start, but I'm starting to feel like this was an anomaly. And
Yes.
you were right. You were proven right, because Chris Wokes, when it's not going your way, when it's not moving as much as it should be, he's the same as David Willey, in that he either is the best bowler in the side or he's completely useless. Sam Curran, he got a breakthrough early, but then looked impotent. Mark Wood was completely off the boil, and that was hard to see. And then, yeah, spinners just looked pathetic. Adil Rashid, I was especially disappointed with. I'm worried, actually, for England if Adil Rashid is as, what's the word? I don't know, just tame.
Yeah.
As tame as he looked there. So, yeah, it's a bit of a doom and gloom way to end, but that's how I feel right now.
Yeah, there's lots of time to come. I mean, England's next 2 games, I think it's Bangladesh and the Netherlands, or Bangladesh and Afghanistan. 2 games that we'd expect to win, to kind of give us a bit of momentum, maybe give some experience to Harry Brook. Maybe he can score a big score, get his tournament going. I mean, he looked good until he gave his wicket away, and I think part of it's the experience. This England team hasn't played nearly as much one-day cricket in the last 4 years as they did between the 2015 and the 2019 World Cup. Whereas New Zealand, India, they played a lot more, and it's showing. That experience is coming through and helping them win these games. And England, I see this as more of a wake-up call for them, as opposed to this England team is terrible. I think if like when England got absolutely hammered by New Zealand in the 2015 World Cup, I wasn't surprised, because I knew how bad England were in comparison with the rest of the world. Whereas at this point in time, I still think England is one of the strongest teams in the competition. And so for this, I just hoping it's a bit of a wake-up call, and they come with a lot more determination. And they think, you know what? New Zealand were probably a lot more desperate to win that game than we were, because of how 2019 went. And we didn't look desperate to win. So we need to be desperate to win as many games of this tournament as we can.
There's an interesting point that somebody pointed out a couple of weeks ago. It was Cap from video, and he dropped a CNQ, which is a Cricket Nerds question. If you've got any, drop them down in the comments.
Yep.
And he said, how much cricket is too much cricket for preparation before the World Cup? He said he thinks South Africa have pretty much nailed it by resting for 3 weeks, staying fresh, and then smashing it in the World Cup. And that was a prediction from him, by the way, because this is 2 weeks ago. Unlike other teams like India, England, and Australia, because obviously there were a lot more last-minute games. I thought England's preparation wasn't great. With a few kind of last-minute games in England against New Zealand, and then a series against Ireland that they didn't play.
When did England last do a one-day? When did England last do a one-day game in the subcontinent?
Yeah,
I don't know.
The last ODI I can remember England playing before that was after the Ashes, against like Down Under, when nobody cared because England had lost the Ashes. That's the last thing I can remember. So, yeah, just ill prepared, and if you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail.
Exactly.
So there's James's words of wisdom to end with. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If there are any questions that you want answered in the next podcast, drop them in the comments with the hashtag CNQ, which stands for Cricket Nerds Question, and we'll try and pick it up in the next episode. Tell your friends about us. We're trying to grow. We're trying to get some more people to say hi, get a bit of community going. So tell your friends about us. Follow us on social media. Share our posts. All of our links are in the link tree down below. You can also listen to this podcast, which is on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. Like I say, everything in the link tree down below. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.